Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, I've just spent the last week out in Marlborough, Massachusetts at the first sports show of the winter. And I have so much that I brought back from there. And I'm not talking about things that I bought. I'm talking about ideas and interactions with people. And the one thing that I realized is that as we talk about fishing, and I've said this before, stories is the way we tell our experiences. And everybody that I would talk to that would come into our booth, they wanted to tell me their story. And I always try to listen, and I try to show amazement over their experiences. Even they might be dwarfed by some of the things that we can do here. But as I tell you this, I want to tell you one of my stories that conversations there brought back to me. And it was a time I was fishing with my buddy Dave Swanson. We had gone down to visit his cousin in the Keys. And it was in the first key. It wasn't way down below, but it was my first time in the Keys. And we went fishing. Of course, that's what we're going to do. And I remember the day we were out there, and we were fishing in this one area, and you could see pelicans up in the trees around watching and watching. And all of a sudden, we caught a fish. The pelican watched us. We put the fish back in, and we cast our lure over wherever he could see that, or she, and immediately she came down and attacked the lure. And unfortunately, it got hooked in her, or wrapped around her or him, and we brought her in. And the guy that we were with was so patient, and he took that bird in his hands, and he unraveled all the line that had tangled around it. And it took a long time, and I was thinking, holy cow, this would have been terrible. That bird would have died. But finally, through all the anguish, and it was watching us as we were doing this, and of course, he had to hold it in a certain way so it's going to try to protect itself. Finally gets it done. And we let the bird go, and the bird flies off and goes way over in the tree and looks back at us. And lo and behold, the next cast out, back comes a pelican, hits the lure again, tries to eat it. Everything that had just happened to him was gone. Didn't seem to remember a thing. And it makes me think about some of the beings around us. You know, I give credit to these fish and these birds and these things and say they're much brighter than we thought. But boy, that wasn't very bright. So, skipping up to now. Before doing this show, I always confer with my friend, again, Dave Swanson. It's funny, the bird situation is going back to Dave. And he told me about a time not too long ago when his son-in-law, Dusan, who was from Serbia, father came over. His father, Bogdan, came over to visit. And in Serbia, people love to fish for catfish and carp. That's their glory fish. And they will spend hours, maybe all day and into the night, sitting on the bank and waiting for a strike. So when Bogdan came over to visit, he wanted to go down and fish off Dave's dock on Cayuga Lake for catfish. And he would go down, he had 3 rods out, and he was patiently, hour after hour, sitting on the dock waiting. And all of a sudden, a great blue heron started flying by. And it came almost by Bogdan, and it got tangled in all 3 of the lines he had out. And what did he do? He didn't have anybody around him, couldn't tell anybody, but he brought the lines back in, and he grabbed that great blue heron, and one of his arms had to wrap around the body, and the other hand had to hold its head so that that great beak wouldn't be piercing him. And he had to wait and wait. He needed help, and no one was there. And finally, Dave said he came down to check on him, see how he was doing, and there he was holding this great blue heron. Now, the end of this story is similar to the last one in that they were able to get the line off the blue heron, or probably 3 lines, and it was able to fly away. Now, I don't think this bird was quite as dumb as a pelican because it didn't come back and try to repeat the process. But the point of it is, these 2 birds were rescued, because fishing line can be such a detriment. And you walk along the shores of streams and you see where people have had tangles in their reel and they've let this line just stay on the banks, and you just wonder how many birds and animals get caught up and they end up dying because they can't help themselves. It's something to think about. The moral to these stories is that the world around us is part of our whole fishing scene. What we're doing there is just sort of taking our place in that spectrum of life, and there's all kinds of other things that are involved in that life, including these birds. And fortunately, we were able to save them, and the story I want you to remember is the next time you get a tangle in your line or you're going along and you see monofilament or line on the ground, pick it up because you might be rescuing something else. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.